Thank you, Presiding Officer. Yesterday, John Swinney said eradicating child poverty would be the top priority of his government. But since his statement, we've heard this. Fiona King from Save the Children said, and I quote, "There is nothing in this programme for government that truly shifts the dial on child poverty." Dr Lindsay MacDonald of Magic Breakfast said, "Far from a manifesto on the eradication of child poverty, this plan will struggle to make a significant dent in the child poverty crisis that Scotland faces." And Mary Glasgow, Chief Executive of Children First, said the charity was deeply concerned that the drastic cuts to public spending will throw many children and families already in crisis over the edge. So who's right, John Swinney or the growing list of experts who say his programme will fail to tackle child poverty?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I recognise the enormity of the challenge that we face on child poverty. It's why it is the central mission of my government to eradicate child poverty. And the reason why child poverty is so high is because Scotland has suffered from 14 years of Conservative austerity and welfare cuts, which have forced families into poverty. That has resulted in the Scottish Government taking steps to spend over £400 million on measures such as the Scottish Child Payment, which, along with our other measures, are keeping 100,000 children out of poverty. Now, I respect all of the organisations and the individuals that Douglas Ross raised with me. These are people that care deeply about the eradication of poverty, as do I. But I think all of them would accept that child poverty has been made the crisis it is in our country today because of the actions that Douglas Ross voted for when he supported the Conservative Government in the House of Commons.
Douglas Ross.
John Swinney says he respects and cares deeply about these experts. These experts were not speaking about previous decisions of the UK Government or current decisions of the Labour Government. They were commenting on his programme for government. They were commenting specifically on the lack of action within it to tackle child poverty. So if the First Minister won't listen to these experts, perhaps John Swinney will listen to John Swinney. When he was Education Secretary, he announced the policy of free school meals for every primary school pupil in Scotland, and he said this: "We must not go back to kids going hungry in the classroom." Now, first that was supposed to happen in 2022, then it was delayed to 2026, and now the programme for government seems to ditch it entirely. So can the First Minister be honest with people across Scotland? Will his government deliver their promise of free school meals to all primary school pupils during this session of Parliament?
First Minister.
I in no way dismissed the expert commentary that Douglas Ross put to me, and I will not have him misrepresenting my words in Parliament, because I respect all of those commentators, just as I respect the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who said in their UK Poverty Report in 2023, divergence in policy across nations will probably drive greater disparity in poverty rates across the UK. Scotland has taken decisive action in defining child poverty targets in legislation and enhancing the benefit system with a Scottish Child Payment. And of course, the latest statistics for child poverty show that child poverty rates in Scotland are 24% compared to 30% in England, 29% in Wales and 23% in Northern Ireland. So I simply put that data on the record to demonstrate that we are taking action, but we are having to swim against a tide of austerity and welfare cuts inflicted upon us by the last Conservative Government, of which Douglas Ross was a supporter. That's before we get near the financial wreckage done by Liz Truss, which Douglas Ross wanted me to emulate. Thank goodness I did not do that. Now, the challenges we face are well rehearsed to Parliament by the Finance Secretary on Tuesday. As a consequence of cumulative inflation, which over the last 3 years has been 18.9%, 18.9%, that has undermined the value of money that we have available. The Government will deliver the commitment that I set out yesterday to ensure that free school meals are available for all primary 1 to 5 pupils on a universal basis and primary 6 and 7 who are eligible for the Scottish Child Payment, and will deliver that in this parliamentary term.
Douglas Ross.
I really don't know why SNP members are applauding that, because that was a very long answer that didn't address the very specific point. So I'll try again. Does John Swinney commit now to deliver the pledge he made as Education Secretary to deliver free school meals to all primary school pupils by the end of this parliamentary session? That was a simple question that can surely get a simple yes or no answer. And let me ask about another pledge that the SNP made to the poorest children in Scotland. This year's exam results showed that the attainment gap is at a higher level, is wider than ever. John Swinney, the Education Secretary, vowed to eradicate the attainment gap completely. Yet John Swinney, the First Minister's bold ambition is merely to seek to reduce it, and he's even failing at that. So is John Swinney proud that his legacy will be Scotland's poorest children falling further behind?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Government is facing very challenging financial times, and I set out yesterday that we will deliver the commitment to ensure that free school meals are available for primary 6 and 7 pupils who are eligible for the Scottish Child Payment. But we will not be able in this parliamentary term to roll out the eligibility on a universal basis across primary 6 and 7 pupils, because our budget has been eroded by the fiscal mismanagement and the sky-high inflation which Douglas Ross was party to creating as part of his support for the United Kingdom Government. Now, on the question of the attainment gap, the Government, of course, has given steadfast support to the education system through the delivery of the Scottish Attainment Challenge and pupil equity funding. And what do we see? We see, amongst young people leaving school and going into positive destinations, the attainment gap has reduced by 60%. 60%. That is transformational for the lives of young people in Scotland, and I'm glad the Government delivered those commitments.
Douglas Ross.
Well, I'm glad at my second attempt I was able to get an honest answer out of John Swinney. He has confirmed that the SNP are breaking their promise to deliver free school meals to all primary school pupils in Scotland. Now, that's movement from his Deputy First Minister just this morning, who, when asked about it on the radio, suggested that it may still be possible and they would do it during this Parliament if budgets allowed. John Swinney's ruled that out. He is now announcing today to people across Scotland that the promise he made as Education Secretary, the promise he asked people to support the SNP to get them into government, has now been broken. Eradicating the attainment gap was supposed to be the SNP's #1 priority, but the attainment gap is as wide as ever. And now it's clear that the top priority of eradicating child poverty is going to go the same way, because the First Minister has just announced they have abandoned their pledge to provide free school meals for all. For 17 years, this Government has overpromised and underdelivered for Scotland's children. No one will believe yet another empty SNP promise to add to the pile. This week's programme for government was supposed to be John Swinney's big relaunch, but instead we got more of the same from an SNP government that is out of ideas and out of ambition. So are broken promises, like the one John Swinney has just announced today, the best he has to offer Scotland's children?
First Minister.
President Officer, my commitment to eradicating child poverty is steadfast in this programme for government, and the Government is putting the resources in to make sure that we can achieve that objective, with over £400 million being spent on the Scottish Child Payment, which is keeping 100,000 children out of poverty. That is what is happening on this Government's watch. We have a lower child poverty rate in Scotland, far too high for my liking, far too high, but it's been made worse by the folly and the actions of the 14 years of the Douglas Ross, as usual, from his front bench seat, shouts and interrupts at me, and he says it's on my choices.
Mr Ross.
Yes, it is my choice, Mr Ross. It's my choice to make sure we invest in the future of Scotland, which the Conservative government destroyed by the austerity agenda that was supported by all of the Conservative members over there. And what the people of Scotland will hear from this government is a determination to ensure that we deliver on our commitments to lift children out of poverty, where the Tories have made the situation worse.